Quentin Grimes has been hooping for the 76ers ever since the trade, and I think Daryl Morey needs to make it a priority to bring Quentin Grimes back in free agency this offseason. You go back to that trade that Daryl Morey made at the deadline with the Dallas Mavericks, sending off Caleb Martin in exchange for Quentin Grimes and a 2025 second-round pick that was actually the Sixers' original second-round pick. And at the time, I was a little unsure on the move. I really liked Caleb Martin and what I thought he could bring to a championship contending team, but he's been dealing with a lot of injuries, hasn't actually played yet for the Mavericks, and what Quentin Grimes has shown, I think the Sixers got an absolute steal in this deal. And just a couple days ago, on Saturday, Quentin Grimes had the best game of his career against the Golden State Warriors, 44 points on 18 of 24 shooting, including 6 of 9 from downtown. He has been everything the Sixers could have asked for and more. So we're going to dive into exactly why I feel the Sixers have to make it a priority to keep him this offseason, and if they can keep him this offseason, because some of the cap stuff with the NBA can get a little confusing and a little hectic. But before we get into all of that, what say you? Do you want the Sixers to keep Quentin Grimes around? Just give me a K for keep or give me a W for let him walk in free agency. So it hasn't just been that one game, obviously, against the Warriors. Quentin Grimes has been solid ever since he arrived in Philadelphia. Now 9 games played with the Sixers, almost at 17 points per game, shooting 51% from the field and 41% from three. And that was after he had a little bit of a rough start from three-point range. He was around mid-30s. Now he's up to over 40. He has been exactly what this Sixers team has needed. And Quentin Grimes has been absolutely tremendous for the Philadelphia 76ers. Quentin Grimes, when you look at what he's done so far for Philadelphia, he's been everything the Sixers could have asked for and more ever since that trade from the Dallas Mavericks, and he's been getting it done on both sides of the ball. Offensively, we knew he was a skilled offensive player, but the Sixers have asked him to do a lot more than he's really ever has been put on his plate in his time with the Knicks and with the Mavericks, and he's really been able to deliver. Not just a catch-and-shoot three-point guy, although that's what he does excel at. He's been doing a lot more off the dribble. He's been taking a lot more shots than he usually would be accustomed to because of all the injuries for the Sixers, and despite the increased workload, he's still been very efficient on the offensive end of the floor. And then defensively, this has always been his calling card on the defensive side. Very, very skilled, and he plays very hard. And with his size, his frame, and his ability to guard on the perimeter, he's been probably the Sixers' best perimeter defender since he's arrived in Philadelphia. So there's no doubt Quentin Grimes should be in the 76ers' long-term plans. He will be a restricted free agent this offseason, meaning the Sixers can match any deal he gets. But despite the price tag he might command after his good stretch of games, I think he should stick around with Philadelphia. Now you can move forward with a good young core, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and Quentin Grimes. These 3 young guards now you can build your team around moving into the future should all be part of the plans, and Quentin Grimes has been amazing for this team. So give me one word to describe Quentin Grimes so far in Philadelphia. Just one word to describe his game, his play, and that amazing 44-point performance where we saw him, honestly, out-dueling Steph Curry. Is he better than Steph Curry? I don't know. The people are talking. But get in that comment section right now. Let me know one word to describe Grimes. Now, coming up next, we're going to explore if the Sixers can afford to keep Grimes, because with him being a restricted free agent and with some of the other free agents upcoming for the 76ers, and these cap rules the NBA have now with the first and second apron, things can get a little confusing, and it could be a little bit difficult when you project what this team might look like heading into next season, because let's be honest, that's what we're really looking at now with the 76ers is next season and beyond. So I'm going to explore that and the cap difficulties there, but before we do, I want to tell you guys about a great new deal that we found over at Fanatics. This 76ers polo, nice and clean Sixers logo right there, up there on the chest. It was $85, but there is a special going on right now through our friends at Fanatics, down to just $63. But make sure you plug in our link, chatsports.com/76polo. That way you can get that deal to apply, and they can know that we sent you here at 76ers. Now I'll have that link in the comments section as well as the description of today's show. So if you want to get yourself a polo right now, again, go to chatsports.com/76 Polo to get that great deal. All right, back to Quentin Grimes here. So when you think about Quentin Grimes, potentially bringing him back next season and beyond, you got to know a few things, right? Grimes is in the final year of his rookie contract, meaning he will be a restricted free agent this offseason. And what that means is the Sixers have the ability to match any offer that another team throws his way. So, for example, the Brooklyn Nets are a team that's going to have a lot of cap space this offseason. They could throw him a deal upwards of $20, maybe even $25 million if they really want to get Grimes on the roster, thus driving up the price for the Sixers. But whatever they offer, if Grimes does sign that offer sheet with the Nets, the Sixers could say, nope, you're not going to Brooklyn. We're going to match it, and we're going to keep you right here in Philadelphia. Now, when you look at the Sixers' contracts and their cap space heading into next season right now, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, Jared McCain, the four of those guys alone already account for $149 million worth of your salary cap space. That leaves the Sixers just $50 million under that first apron to build out the rest of the team. Again, you need about 15 guys on an NBA roster, and right now, four of those guys leave you about 3/4 of the way full on that cap space. So there's 50 mil left to fill out the rest of the roster. Of course, you're going to have some other guys that are going to be back, like Ricky Council and Adam Bona at very affordable prices. So you factor them into the equation as well, and then a couple other veterans that most likely are going to be on this team next year, unless they're traded at some point. Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon, both have player options. Drummond at about $5 million, Eric Gordon at $3.5 million. I'd be surprised if either of those guys decline those options. Eric Gordon, especially, I'm sure he'll pick up that $3.5 million, because if not, he would probably sign for the vet min at about $2 million. Drummond, we'll see. Could he get more than $5 million? Maybe. It hasn't looked great, but I do expect these two back on the roster, so that's more money being taken up now. But what the real key to all this is, with Quentin Grimes and how they can afford to bring him back and what a deal might look like and how they can shape the roster this offseason, the key is all Guerschon Yabusele and what kind of deal he does end up signing with the 76ers this offseason, because that's going to determine how much cap space the Sixers have to use and how they can fill out this roster. Because re-signing Yabusele, a little bit confusing. Yabusele is going to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason, and because he's been with the Sixers for just this one season, they do not have his bird rights, meaning they cannot go over the salary cap to re-sign him. They're, of course, already going to be over the salary cap as they're a little bit below the luxury tax, so they can't just give Guerschon Yabusele whatever deal he wants. So there's really two options the Sixers have to re-sign Yabusele, and it's going to be using a mid-level exception, of which there are a couple the Sixers could use in this scenario. First is the taxpayer mid-level exception, designed for teams that are in the luxury tax. That's $5.7 million a year. I think Guerschon Yabusele is going to command a lot more than $5.7 million a year. Now, the other option the Sixers can use here is using the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which right now they will have available to them as they are below the luxury tax. That comes in at about $14 million, which I think is much more in the range of what Yabusele deserves and what he has earned and what he could get this offseason from other teams. But it gets complicated when using these exceptions, again, because of these NBA cap rules. If the Sixers do want to use that non-taxpayer mid-level exception on Guerschon Yabusele at $14 million because they believe he's worth that and that's what he is looking for, they get hard capped at the first apron, $195 million. That means they are not allowed to exceed that number no matter what on their roster. And again, you go back to what I said earlier, they were already at about 150 with just Embiid, Maxey, Paul George, and McCain. So if you use that $14 million on Yabusele, that goes up to, about 164? And then you only have about $30 million to fill out the rest of the roster. You cannot go over that, no matter what. Now, if they use the taxpayer mid-level exception at about that $5 million, they get a little more money to play with. You're capped at the 207.8 mark. So about an extra $12 million to play with to help fill out the roster? But it really comes down to what Guerschon Yabusele wants to do. The best bet for the Sixers and what will be best for the team is convincing Guerschon Yabusele to take that smaller deal, the taxpayer mid-level exception, just $5.7 million, give yourself more room to play with, and then re-sign him next year to a bigger deal when you have more options to re-signing him long-term. It's very similar to to what the Sixers did this past offseason with Kelly Oubre, who's going to be a free agent as well this offseason. But would Guerschon Yabusele really be willing to take a smaller deal and sort of another one-year deal given his path so far in the NBA? First round pick all those years ago for Boston, flamed out of the league, went overseas, but got his chance this year with the 76ers. So if I'm Guerschon Yabusele personally, I want to cash in because I don't know what my opportunities might look like moving forward into the future. And you just had a great season. You deserve to get paid. If I'm Yabusele, I'm not taking that low taxpayer mid-level exception. I want the bag. I want the money, despite how much he has fit in here with the 76ers, and he's a fan favorite. I think he's going to want to get paid, so it really comes down to what direction he wants to go in. So if Yabusele is not open to taking that smaller deal, most likely one of Quinton Grimes or Kelly Oubre is probably gone because, again, you're going to be hard capped at that number at about $196 million. So you just really won't have enough money to bring back Oubre, bring back Grimes, and then also fill out the roster with other external free agents. And if this is all a little bit confusing, I know with the NBA and their cap numbers, it's a lot to take in. So here's a quick quote from Brian Toprick of Liberty Ballers, trying to put things a little more simply. Basically, all you need to know with re-signing Yabusele and Grimes and Oubre is this. If the Sixers do splurge to re-sign either Grimes or Oubre, it could cost them a shot at using the non-taxpayer mid-level exception to retain Yabusele because they would go over that tax number, so they would no longer have access to that $14.1 million exception. But if the Sixers first use the non-taxpayer mid-level exception on Yabusele, they give him that $14 million right away off the bat, that hard cap might force them to move on from one of Grimes or Oubre. So a lot of tough decisions going to be coming up for the Sixers this offseason. But look, I do have to give Daryl Morey a little bit of credit here. I know people don't want to hear it, and they don't want to say that Daryl Morey has done some good things. But look, the situation the Sixers are in, it's a good situation to be in because you have all these good players you want to re-sign, and it's just the nature of the NBA these days where it's very hard to construct a really good team with a lot of high-paid players with these first and second aprons. But look, Morey's done a lot of good things with getting Kelly Oubre on this roster a couple of years ago, and he's been outperforming his contract and making the trade for Quinton Grimes, sending off a player in Caleb Martin and getting back, I think, a better player in Grimes and also a draft pick. And then finding Guerschon Yabusele, being the team to give him a chance and let him prove himself again in the NBA. So he's made some good moves, but now this offseason, it's really going to be the time to determine who do we bring back and how do we put this team in the best position to win games next season. So before we get out of here, I want to ask you guys one last question. Who is your biggest priority to re-sign this offseason? All three of these guys are going to be free agents. You can probably get two of the three, but getting all three back is probably not going to happen. But if you had to pick one as your number one free agent priority for Philadelphia, who would it be? Type QG for Quinton Grimes, GY for Guerschon Yabusele, or KO for Kelly Oubre.